When I hear some Texas and Oklahoma fans say, man, we're going to go in here, we just got to be able to beat Alabama or we just got to be able to beat Georgia. To me, that is the biggest misconception of what the SEC truly is. And you can ask any coach this that has coached there, including Steve Sarkisian, who is at Texas right now. It's not having to just beat the best team, the Alabamas and the Georgias, who have some of the best rosters in the country. It's then you got to go play at Kentucky, who they've got their fair share. They could beat you on any given day. Then you got to go play Ole Miss at home. It's the teams on the periphery outside of just the top. That's why I tell Texas fans, just you need to see it first. Because again, what did Mike Tyson say? Everybody's got a plan till you get punched in the face. And Texas beat Alabama last year. Just when you look at Texas and Oklahoma, where are you on their ability to blend year one? I know they're in different spots roster-wise. I'm not asking you to say they're going to be even, but kind of how do you see it?
It's twofold. I think there's a lot of hubris and a lot of maybe unreasonable expectation on both sides. On the Texas OU side, you're right. Everybody understands the challenge when you go to Athens. Everybody understands the challenge when like LSU or Alabama come into your building. The whole going to Starkville on a Saturday for 11 a.m. kickoff, like that sounds very simple because any given year Mississippi State could be headed towards a sub 500 finish. But then you turn on the draft the next spring, and they've got like 2 defensive linemen going first round. And they've got like a safety that goes third round, a wide receiver goes fifth round. And you're like, those guys played on the team that went 5-7? And yes, that's because the team overall wasn't great. But the bumps and bruises, like your training room doesn't look any less full Sunday morning after you went and played them and won a 33-16 slop fest. And then the cumulative effect of having to then go to Florida after that, and then A&M comes to you before you go play the Alabama game. That's the totality of carnage in the SEC, which is why depth is so paramount and which is why the NIL portal era is not necessarily victimizing teams at the top level of the roster, but second and third level is getting gutted. And then that shows up in week 8 and week 9 in the fall. So on one side, yeah, there's a pretty sharp experience and learning curve for both of them. But then there's this other thought, I call it like just the SEC drumbeat thought, which is where a Mississippi State fan or a South Carolina fan or a Kentucky fan, teams that don't perennially exist near the top of the conference, they start looking at Texas and OU and they start listening to what we're talking about right now and they start grinning and saying, yeah, y'all about to find out about the SEC. Well, that's true. Here's the problem, though. These teams are not getting on the SEC bus and going to the back 2 seats. They're getting on the bus. They may not sit in row 1. And Oklahoma may be a row or 2 behind Texas in year 1. But they're going to walk and walk and walk the Forrest Gump walk of shame, but they're going to find a seat, row 3, row 4, and then someone's going to tell you, get up, you're in their seat. Like they're coming into this thing better than you are. And there's a whole lot of like pride that's being taken by some of the fan bases in the SEC of adding Texas and OU in the lesson we're about to teach them and how great this is going to be. And really all it is another loss and a quarter per average per year on your schedule. And it could bump you down even further in the bowl eligibility ranking. But also, I think the perception change of how coaches are viewed in this conference, and I think the perception change, Big Ten and SEC, of understanding what a 10-win season means, what a 9-win, 8-win season means. Florida, I'm a firm believer, could be the 13th best team in the country this year and go 8-4. Because they play at least 5 top 10 teams in a row to end the year.
That schedule's brutal.
It's insanity.
It's absolutely brutal. No, and you know, I do think Texas has a chance this year because up front, I feel like they're willing to compete, or they're built to compete. And Sark knows it. Sark's been in the conference. But David, I mean, we've talked about DeBoer as well at Alabama and kind of what, you know, forecasting his first year, and it's obviously an interesting turnover in the times. What are your thoughts on Alabama year 1 under Carolina?
Yeah, so we went down there and sat down with him, got like a shocking amount of access. Like Saban was always...
Seems like everybody's getting that now.
It's pretty crazy. Like Saban was good to us when we came down there, but you're not sitting in a staff meeting at Alabama when you're sitting there. So I think that Kalen DeBoer, the talk will be, until proven otherwise, about whether or not he can recruit at a high level in the SEC, and that's age old. From the day he got hired there, that's what people talked about. So that remains to be seen. Like, I think they'll do fine. I actually think the inverse is true. A lot of people look at Nick Saban and how he recruited at Alabama, and they think to themselves, ooh, he didn't have to spend money because you got the whole Saban discount thing. And now kids aren't just going to go to Alabama at a discounted price because Saban's there. What are you going to do? Well, that's true. But what I actually think is Bama has a pretty decent war chest, or potential to have one, that they never had to explore because Saban was there. Now they're having to explore it. And like Alabama football is many things, but poverty is not one of them. So I actually think they'll be okay on that front. He upgraded their defensive staff. Their defensive coaching staff is definitively better than what they had in not just the last year, but the last couple of years of Nick Saban being there, which kind of circles back to, I think, one of the biggest mysteries and unknowns and just spots of ignorance that people have towards college football because they can't know, because they can't see behind the curtain. How hiring happens, it would blow your mind.
Yeah.
Like if you actually see how hiring happens and you have this like immense respect for the due diligence being done and the vetting and the interview process, that's not how it works.
No.
It's just not how it works.
It's much more buddy than what a lot of people think.
Well, it's much more agent than some
for
people
sure.
think.
Well, that's what I mean by buddy.
Yeah.
It's really Jimmy Sexton calling himself.
It's pretty amazing. And so they had, by Alabama standards, pretty average defensive staffs in the latter, especially last year. Look, Saban ran a lot of their defensive mechanisms last year, and people didn't know that. And I think it wore him dog-tired and was the biggest contributing factor, even above and beyond just what NIL in the portal is, to him stepping down after the year. So Kane Womack came in.
Yep.
And like Mo Linguist came in, and Colin Hitchler, the safeties coach, loved him.
Colin at South.
Like those dudes are very underrated, and they will probably become household names over the next couple of years. We'll see, man. Like 10-2 is not a bad year.
Yeah.
If they go 10-2 this year, I have no clue how people.
Well, you know how it is at Alabama.
Yeah.
If they lose 3, they'll burn it.
Yeah, they lose 3. It'll turn into fallout.
Did you have anything to add on Texas and Oklahoma?
No, I'm
Or the
excited.
SEC?
I'm when it comes to Texas, you lose a couple in the draft. Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell. You get Quinn back, but I'm just worried about that secondary. Like, will that secondary be able to hold up in the SEC? You're not going to be able to outscore everybody every week in the SEC and win games. That's Tennessee. They tried it.
Shit, that's whole
They got a reloaded defensive line,
It
too.
doesn't work. It doesn't work. So you're going to have some sort of a semblance of a defense, of a secondary when you walk there. Oklahoma, it's going to take a couple of years. It is. It is. I just don't think they're ready
Which is
yet.
so weird because they've had such a better
I
decade
know.
than Texas did, but they're just switching at the right time. And the SEC, to me, can't have it both ways, and I don't think it'll last longer than this year once both programs come in. But they can't take pride in Texas and Oklahoma coming into the conference and saying, hey, these are two awesome, traditional top 10 blue blood programs, and we're getting a win for adding them, but then also say, but you'll be bottom tier when you come in. And once they actually get into the conference, I think it'll be,
You know how hurt the feelings would be if Texas won the SEC year one.
You know what? As a content creator, part of me, Josh, part of me, it needs to go one or two ways. It needs to go really, really good or really, really bad.
Yeah,
I'll say the quiet part out loud.
One more thing. I got all the reverence in the world for the Iron Bowl. I've been to Ohio State, Michigan the past 3 years. It's the best rivalry
past 3
game.
years?
Really?
That's the best thing I've ever experienced in the sport.
All right, Josh Pate, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks for. No, I'm just kidding.
But so let me add this. I've been to Texas and OU 2 times in the past 3 years. And it's a totally unique experience under any other rivalry game because it's neutral site.
Neutral
It's not
site,
like
yeah.
Legion Field used to be in Birmingham. There is an argument that will be made by them, and it's going to be a tough stance for me to take, that Texas OU becomes the best rivalry game in the conference. People who know the Iron Bowl will think that's just sacrilege to even suggest. I know the Iron Bowl, dude. I grew up on the Chattahoochee River. Like I grew up right in the thick of that thing. I've been to the Iron Bowl like a dozen times. I've been to Texas OU, probably 2 of the best games that rivalry's ever had. Last 3 years speaks for itself in Michigan, Ohio State. I'm not saying it overtakes the Iron Bowl in the SEC. I'm just saying Texas OU, like played at the highest level, takes a backseat to no rivalry game I've experienced. It's awesome.
Girls can look unbelievably pretty in many different ways.
So even neutral site, do you think rivals, the home and home aspect to rivalry?
I don't always prefer it. I wish Georgia, Florida was played home and home, actually.
I do,
I
too.
couldn't care less about
I
Jacksonville.
do.
I do, too.
That.
But the Texas OU thing, because of the setting and because of what's so awesome with the Cotton Bowl setup, and I'm a big fan of buildings that are over 500 years old.
Yeah.
I wish we did that exclusively in college football. If you have like a field media pass at that game, you can go up the tunnel at halftime, and you can go out into the Texas State Fair, and it's not crowded because everyone's in the game. So you can go like funnel cake, you can go carnival games, and then you can walk back down, and you're like right on the field again for the third quarter. and it's 11 a.m., which I love, and everyone else hates the early kickoff, but I love it because you can get home that day. The last 2 times I've been there, it's been shootout games.
Yeah.
Like both games decided in the final minute. So admittedly, I saw it at its best, like wall-to-wall sunshine, everything was great. I love that game being neutral.
Do you like it being
Florida,
middle of the season?
I love
it's
it.
also not rivalry.
Love it,
week.
yes, yes. Like I love rivalry week because how can you not love it? But I actually would prefer for us to go mustard and catch them, like spread rivalries out.
Yeah.
Interesting.
YouTube, what's up? I know y'all loving the new time. We are too. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Keep sharing the show. Y'all know what's about to go down when football season comes here too. Y'all know what's up.